Well, here we go. Welcome to the first ever edition of the Happy Accidents podcast. I am your host, Dennis Geelen. More about me a little bit in a second, but just normally this podcast is going to be sharing stories of accidental success, people that stumbled across a new idea and went with it, people that met each other in a chance encounter and then ended up becoming very successful business partners, people who just had some fluke timing or some sort of serendipitous moment that led to this crazy success. But that's not today's episode. With this being the first ever edition of the podcast, I just want to kind of set this one up so you know what to expect moving forward. So today I'm just going to talk about why the Happy Accidents podcast. Where did this come from, and what can you expect in future episodes? So let me start off by just playing for you the normal intro that you can expect for the podcast moving forward. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. Okay, welcome back. That was the intro that you're going to get used to hearing as I share these happy accident stories moving forward. But today, why happy accidents? Why this podcast? What's this all about, and what can you expect? Well, this little bit of backstory here. As I said, I'm Dennis Geelen. I call myself the Accidental Solopreneur because I've written a book by the same name. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the book behind me on my bookshelf. And the reason is because I never fancied myself an entrepreneur at all. I didn't think I ever had an entrepreneurial bone in my body. And then by the age of 43, I was getting quite complacent in life, in my job, of just kind of coasting until one day I was laid off. And that threw me for a loop. I had no idea to expect that. And after the layoff, my first instinct was to jump back in and find another corporate job. I soon decided, no, that wasn't working before, wasn't as safe and comfortable as I thought it was. So fast forward a little bit, with some encouragement from my wife, I decided I was going to start my own management consulting company. Had no idea what I was doing, never started a company before in my life. I didn't know what I was doing. So this was that curse of knowledge. And soon found myself having to learn a ton about being an entrepreneur, branding, marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff, how to attract and retain clients. And I went on this journey of learning about how to do that, and wrote a book called The Zero In Formula. You can see that one behind me again if you're on video. And that kind of took off. Never knew how to write a book or publish a book, but learned as much as I could about writing, editing, publishing, marketing, and things kind of took off. Fast forward again, I was sharing all this on LinkedIn, just sharing my journey. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm doing. And people started to take notice eventually. And I started getting a lot of people saying, hey, I want to do what you're doing. I'm kind of complacent, or I just got laid off, or I want to leave my job and start my own business. And can I learn from you? And I said, well, I don't know if I'm the best person to learn from. I'm not this experienced amazing entrepreneur. I just kind of fell into this and figuring it out as I go. And they were kind of like, well, yeah, that's exactly who I want to learn from. Not somebody who's been doing it for 10 years, somebody who's just a few steps ahead of me and can share something more relevant. So I did. I started coaching other solopreneurs, people who wanted to start their own one-person business, coaching, consulting, freelancers, graphic designers, whatever. And then I wrote the book, The Accidental Solopreneur, that kind of tells a story of somebody that goes through this and shares all these lessons. It's a fictional parable. Called it The Accidental Solopreneur, because that's really what I feel, what I am. And that name really started to resonate with people. People were like, oh, I love that title. I love accidental solopreneur. I feel like I'm an accidental solopreneur. And the story really started resonating with a ton of people. Well, that's like my story. I was burnt out. I got laid off. I decided to bet on myself. I love the characters in the book. And oh, I see myself in this character. And I see this person in my life as that character. And so all these people were resonating with the book. And the accidental part of it specifically. And then I started getting all these people going, hey, did you hear about this person that started by accident? Did you hear about this product that was invented by accident? And people started sending me these stories because of the title of my book, The Accidental Solopreneur. I thought, well, there's a pretty interesting parallel there, like accidental success in general, whether you accidentally met somebody, accidentally discovered a new idea, accidentally fell into something and went with it, kind of along the same lines as mine. I was laid off and never planned on being a solopreneur and kind of accidentally fell into this. So I started researching more and more, are there other accidental success stories out there? Turns out there's thousands. In fact, what I found was a lot of success can actually be traced back to a happy accident in some way, shape, or form. And I started sharing some of these stories once a week in a post on LinkedIn. Every Tuesday, I would share a new accidental success story. And those posts were taking off. People loved, anybody loves a good story. And then anytime you have a story with a great twist that, hey, I didn't know that wildly successful person or product or business was actually started by accident, or they didn't mean for it to turn out the way it did. It was actually better than what they planned. That's incredible. So then it was like, oh, light bulb moment. This could be a great concept for a newsletter. People were already looking forward to these happy accident stories once a week on LinkedIn. I've already created this writing cadence where I can write these stories once a week. People are already following them. I'll just announce to people that, hey, if you want to continue to get these stories, they're soon going to be coming in a newsletter form only. So subscribe here. And before the first newsletter even went out, I think I had 150 people subscribed, and it kind of went from there. I've had over 1,400 people subscribe to the newsletter now. I've um, published over 60 editions. I've got a great open rate. I got people sponsoring the newsletter. So, I mean, it's not wildly successful. It's not making me six figures, and I don't have tens and thousands or hundreds of thousands of people subscribed. Um, but it's pretty cool, and I'm enjoying it. And people seem to really like the stories. So I thought, hey, this is great. I'll keep going with it. Um, One of the great byproducts, though, for me has been all the learning. I have to do a ton of research to write these stories. I'm researching people, I'm researching products, companies, partnerships that all can be traced back to some sort of fluke, accidental, serendipity, accident, whatever. And there's tons of learning there. But then to research what they did and how they did it, there was tons of learning. And I share those in the newsletter each week. Here's the learnings from this story. Here's some fun facts that you might not have known as well. But after, maybe a dozen or two dozen stories, I found a pattern that I call the anatomy of a happy accident success story. And they all seem to follow this three-stage act or three-step process. first act one, stage one, step one, whatever you want to call it, the person wasn't just sitting around hoping to be successful, hoping to get lucky, hoping to have an opportunity. They were what I call setting the stage. Or another term I like to use is they were increasing their luck surface area. They were getting out there, trying new ideas, testing new things, meeting new people, right? They weren't just sitting around, they were being active and they were increasing their luck surface area. They were really expanding all these experiences and trying a bunch of different stuff. You can see this over and over in all these different happy accident stories. It wasn't that somebody was sitting on their couch and all of a sudden had a great idea pop into their head. And next thing you know, they worked hard and they were successful. That's not what happened. They had to set the stage. They had to increase that luck surface area. Now, they had no idea that some sort of serendipitous opportunity was going to come their way. They were hoping for success, obviously, but they didn't know what was going to come their way or when it was going to come their way or how. But eventually, some unintended or unexpected idea or discovery happens upon them. And that's the end of Act One or Step One. Step two is the happy accident, right? They accidentally discover this idea or this product or whatever it is. This opportunity unexpectedly lands in their lap. And obviously, in the newsletter stories and now in the podcast, I'll be diving into that. What were those accidental discoveries? But it doesn't end there. Step three, or act three, or stage three, the person or the people then have to capitalize on those unexpected opportunities. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say about successful people or entrepreneurs, oh, they got lucky. And yeah, you're going to find out in these stories, there is some luck involved. It's not just hard work. You don't just have to be the smartest person or the hardest working person in the world to be successful. Yes, hard work is a part of it. Yes, you have to be, smart or strategic at times. But those two things on their own are not going to lead to success. There are tons of hardworking people in the world, probably millions, maybe even billions of hardworking people in the world that would not consider themselves successful. There are millions, maybe billions of people in the world who are super smart that wouldn't consider themselves successful. Put those two together, there's probably millions of hardworking, smart people in the world that wouldn't consider themselves successful. Those two things alone are not enough. They have to have a little bit of luck involved, a little bit of timing, some sort of opportunity that comes their way that they weren't expecting. And then, as I said, they have to capitalize on it. So when you hear people say, oh, they got lucky, well, no, they set the stage for that luck. They were getting out there, increasing their luck surface area by meeting people, testing ideas, doing things, working hard. Then that opportunity came their way. But then they also capitalized on it. And there's tons of people out there who, A, don't set the stage or, are out there trying new things, increasing their luck surface area. Well, they're never going to have this happen to them. And then there's people that do that, but they don't recognize these opportunities when they land in their lap. Maybe they're too hyper focused, they're head down, they're just work, 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 work. They're setting the stage, but never recognizing the opportunity. And maybe there's people who actually do set the stage and do have an opportunity to land in their lap, but they just don't have what it takes for whatever reason to capitalize on it. Maybe they're too scared. Maybe they feel like, oh, the timing's not right. Or maybe they feel like they're not the right person. Oh, I could never do that. So they recognize the opportunity, but they let it go away. The stories that you're going to hear in this podcast and the ones that I write about in the newsletter, they do all three. They set the stage, they recognize this unexpected opportunity, and then they have the courage and the boldness to capitalize on it. Some of the stories are amazing, what these people end up doing. But it takes all three of those. So when you hear people say, oh, they just got lucky, no, the luck was one part of it. There's those other two stages. They had to create that luck and they had to capitalize on that luck as well. So here we go. This is what you're going to hear in the podcast. Like I said, I've written over 60 of these stories in the newsletter, and those are going to continue. In fact, if you prefer, To read these stories, you can always sign up for the newsletter. Just head to my website, www.dennisgeelen.me, and you'll see there where you can subscribe to the newsletter. But if you're like a lot of the people who actually read the newsletter, a ton of them have reached out to me saying, wow, you should actually turn this into a podcast as well, because this would be amazing stories to listen to while I'm driving, while I'm working, while I'm working out, whatever. I like to have a podcast on, and these would make amazing podcast stories. So, just like starting my own business, just like writing a book, just like launching a newsletter, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to host or publish a great podcast, um, but I'm going to figure it out as I go. And I'm very delighted to have you along for the ride with me. So I hope you enjoy all these stories. Like I said, this is just episode 1 where I'm teeing things up. Next episode, I'll start launching into a different story each week, just like I do in the newsletter. And what you're going to hear at the end here is the outro that you can expect to hear for every podcast episode moving forward. Enjoy. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends. Since Play-Doh burst on the scenes in the 1950s as an immensely popular child's toy, if you can call it that, more than 3 billion cans of the stuff has been sold to date. Think about that. 3 billion cans of Play-Doh sold worldwide. This is a popular children's toy around the world. Most of us can remember playing either just making up stuff with Play-Doh, or we had the Play-Doh sets where you had the stuff coming through the guy's head and you had to cut it off like a barber shop, or maybe you even had the homemade Play-Doh made by mom or dad. That stuff not quite the same, but still did the trick. This is bringing back tons of memories of tons of fun as a child, but there's way more to the story here. Play-Doh actually had a 20-year career, if you want to call it that, as a completely different product for a completely different use before the pivot to becoming what we know of it today as a child's toy. And the story is an incredible one. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. Okay, welcome to the very first episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we're actually diving into a happy accident story. If you joined me for the initial podcast episode, it was more of a tee up explaining why this podcast, where did it come from, what to expect, and here you are. Now you can expect some great stories. So this story first came out in the newsletter of late January, early February 2023, the Happy Accidents newsletter, and here I am in March of 2024, over a year later, sharing the story again as the first story in the Happy Accidents podcast. So dig in, sit back. Either you're watching or listening. Just you're gonna love this story of accidental success. So as I mentioned off the top, this product was actually around for 20 years and used in a completely different manner under a completely different name before it accidentally found a brand new identity that we know of it as today under Play-Doh. So here's how this incredible adventure unfolds. Back in 1933, there was a man by the name of Cleo McVicker, and him along with his brother Noah, the McVicker brothers, they decided to take a real leap of faith when they sold the idea, just the idea, of a wallpaper cleaner product to a retail store chain. So they already had this company. They had a company called Kutal Products where they sold stuff like this to retail store chains. And what they found was there was a need in the market for a wallpaper cleaner. Wallpaper were starting to become a more popular product, and people needed a good, efficient, effective way of cleaning the wallpaper. So the McVicker brothers said to this retail store, man, that's a hard one to say, retail store chain, hey, we've got a product. We will produce this wallpaper cleaner. You can sell it in your stores. And it just seemed like a natural fit. The problem being that they had never designed such a product like this before. So now that they'd sold the idea, they actually had to execute on it. It's kind of like the dog chasing a car. What does it do when it actually catches the car, right? Now they actually had to create this wallpaper cleaner product. So they got to work and eventually they did it. They actually developed a solution, you know it, made from flour, water, salt, and boric acid. This was what we know as Play-Doh today. They created this as a wallpaper cleaner, and the product was a hit. And it served Kutal products very well for at least 15 years. This was a popular product flying off the shelves in these retail stores. But eventually, they ran into some issues. Cleo, one of the brothers, he eventually died in 1949. And then it was his son Joseph that took over the company and found that the sales for this wallpaper cleaner was eventually starting to dry up. By 1953, the company was seriously struggling. Kutal Products was in trouble. So, by complete fluke, accident, or maybe it's just fortunate luck, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to see a lot of that in these stories throughout the podcast, Joseph's sister in law. So now this is the son of one of the original founders. So Joseph the son, his sister-in-law, a lady by the name of Kay Zufall, had an idea. So Kay, Mrs. Zufall, she was a nursery school teacher, and she decided she was going to take this product and use it with her students and just have it be a way for them to use their imagination, create different objects, and just have some fun with it. Well, as you can probably imagine, the kids loved it. Just you know what it felt like to grab this gooey stuff, different colors, and just be able to make different shapes, put things together. It's like your imagination is exploding, and you don't have to be a great artist to be able to mold some things together with this cool little product called Play-Doh. Well, once Joseph McVicker saw how popular it was with the children, and of course with some convincing from his sister-in-law, he decided he was going to reposition the product. So in 1956, Rainbow Crafts Company Inc. was established, and the product was now rebranded as what we know today as Play-Doh. And the rest, as they say, is history. So here's some fun facts about Play-Doh that you may or may not know. In 1960, accessories were added to the Play-Doh line. We've all probably used the different accessories, including the now famous Fun Factory. So that came along in 1960. In 1964, Rainbow Crafts was shipping more than 1 million cans of Play-Doh per year. So now we're talking within 7, 8 short years, 1 million cans of this stuff was going out per year. Talk about a successful pivot. Talk about a happy accident. If it wasn't for his sister-in-law taking it into the classroom and then, getting the idea that, boy, this stuff could actually pivot into a completely different product, 1 million cans a year within 7 or 8 years. By 1972, Play-Doh was acquired by General Mills under the Kenner brand. Then in 1991, Play-Doh was then acquired by Hasbro, who continues to own it today. And to date, more than 3 billion cans of Play-Doh have been sold since its transition from a wallpaper cleaner to a children's toy in 1956. All of this due to a happy accident. So what are the lessons here? What are some things that we can learn from the Play-Doh story? Well, there's several, but there's 3 that I really want to highlight for you here if you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you can just think of this in terms of your own life or your career. Here's 3 different takeaways that you can learn from the Play-Doh story. 1, don't be so attached to your product or idea that you're too stubborn to pivot. Imagine if he never let his sister-in-law take the stuff into the classroom, number 1. Or imagine if he didn't pay attention to the signals that, boy, the kids are loving this, and I really have something on my hands here that can repivot. Don't be so stubborn. Pay attention to the market. Be open to new ideas. The idea that you first came up with could actually be suited for something even better down the road. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, just about anything can be rebranded or reinvented, right? Even wallpaper cleaner. So something as mundane as that, if you keep your mind open, where else could this be used, and what can it tell you? And number 3, like you kind of mentioned in the first one, look to new customer segments or audiences to see how they use your products differently. This is really talking about observation at this point, because many of us, when we create something, we have an idea of mind of how this is going to be used. That doesn't mean that's how people are actually going to use it. It might function completely differently for them. They might find a different use for it. This is an extreme case. Wallpaper cleaner gets used as a children's toy, but even some of the smallest changes, smallest things that you're noticing. How is somebody using my software differently? How is somebody using that instrument I created differently, or that tool differently? Now, can I reposition it? Can I rebrand it? Can I remarket it based on how people are actually utilizing it in their life? So just 3 quick takeaway lessons there from the incredible story of Play-Doh. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I have enjoyed researching it and telling it. And yeah, thanks so much. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends. The global potato chips market size reached a value of $30.7 billion US in 2022. That market is expected to reach $39 billion US by 2027. $39 billion worth of potato chips sold worldwide. And as you guessed it, the origin story of potato chips can all be traced back to a happy accident. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents Podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. You'd be surprised what can happen when you channel your frustration into something good. In this episode of the Happy Accidents Podcast, we're looking at the comical invention of one of the most beloved snacks worldwide. Now, before I dive into this story, I have to give a little bit of a caveat. There is some conflicting opinions, views, evidence around whether this story is completely accurate or not. But as they like to say in the journalist world, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So I'm going to tell you the story the way that I've found it, the way I've researched it. It may not be 100% factual, but either way, it's a great story. So here it goes. As the legend goes, this all started way back in 1853 when a man by the name of George Crumb, who was a chef at Moon's Lake Restaurant in Saratoga Springs, New York, became irritated when a customer kept refusing to eat the fried potatoes that he was being served. So just picture this for a second. Mid 1800, so 1853, Saratoga Springs, New York. George Crumb is a chef at Moon's Lake Restaurant, and this customer has been ordering fried potatoes and keeps sending them back. He's refusing to eat them. He says they're not cooked the way that he expects them to or likes them to be. That customer was a shipping and railroad tycoon by the name of Cornelius Vanderbilt. I just love that name. Cornelius Vanderbilt. So he's the villain in the story here. He's ordered these fried potatoes. He keeps sending them back. The chef, who's maybe a little proud at the time, George Crumb, he's getting irritated. He's getting frustrated. Who's this guy? Who's this guy telling me I'm not cooking his fried potatoes correctly? And Crumb decides he's going to take things into his own hands. Crumb kept preparing these potatoes. Vanderbilt kept sending them back. His complaint was the potatoes were apparently too thick and too soggy. So what does Crumb do about it? How does he exact his revenge? How does he take things into his own hands? Thoroughly frustrated and completely out of spite, Crumb decides he's going to slice the potatoes as thinly as possible and then fry them until they're extremely crisp. I can just see it right now. Oh, yeah? You're sending these back because you say that they're too thick and too soggy? How about I make them as thin and crispy as possible? So that's what he does. Slices up these extremely slim potatoes. He fries them until they're super crispy, sends them out. Turns out Vanderbilt loved them. Loved them. This is exactly what I was asking for. Thank you. Well, can you imagine Crumb thinking he's exacting some revenge, thinking he's getting this guy back? To his surprise, that's exactly what the guy wanted. Completely, turn the tables on him. So this new snack actually ends up catching on. And at first, they're called Saratoga chips, right? Obviously, Vanderbilt loved them, probably told other people. The restaurant maybe started serving them as part of their menu. Saratoga chips were born. And the rest, as they say, is history. All due to this happy accident. So off the top, I let you know about a few fun facts about potato chips. The market size valued at the end of 2022 was 30.7 billion and expected to reach 39 billion US by the end of 2027. Here's a couple other facts you may or may not know about potato chips. A single serving of regular potato chips provides 160 calories. Now, I'm not sure what they're considering a single serving. Maybe 10 potato chips for most people. For me, a regular serving's like a bag and a half, maybe. I eat one and I can't seem to stop. Anyway, a regular normal person's singular serving would be 160 calories, 10 grams of fat, 15 grams of carbohydrates, and 2 grams of protein. Another fun fact about potato chips. Why are they so addictive? Like I said, I eat one, I need to eat a bag and a half of them. So why? Why are they so addictive? So, well, studies show that eating salty chips triggers the release of dopamine, which is a chemical messenger that controls your brain's pleasure center. So once your brain gets that first reward hit, it starts craving more. I'm sure we've all experienced dopamine hits in some way, form, or another, but apparently potato chips and the saltiness in the chips is what triggers that and wants us, our brain to continue eating more and more and more. So there you go. A few fun facts you may or may not have known about potato chips. How about lessons learned? What are some lessons we can learn from this story? So just quick recap again. George Crumb, the chef, Cornelius Vanderbilt, the customer in this situation, he keeps sending back his fried potatoes. They're not done quite right. And Crumb decides, I'm going to over exaggerate this and make them super thin and super crispy. Well, one lesson, maybe being a little salty is a good thing sometimes. Being a little salty, being George Crumb, I'm going to show you, I'm going to take things to extremes. What if we did that? What if we tried an idea out and took it to an extreme in one way or another? What if I made that as extreme as possible on the low side, on the high side? Does my idea become even better? In this case, that he wasn't intending to create an amazing product. He was intending to get back at somebody, but inadvertently, that's what happened. He took it to the extreme, and an extremely amazing product was born. Lesson number 2, don't get mad, get even. Right? That's what he was trying to do in this case. Obviously, I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but it might result in a more creative solution. What if you channeled your anger or your frustration into coming up with a creative idea? What if we took it that way? Instead of just getting mad and doing something, angrily or out of spite, how can we channel that? Lesson number 3, be open to new ideas. Crumb had his way of slicing and frying fried potatoes. Along came somebody else with a radically different view of how they wanted to eat them. What if Crumb had just thrown up his hands and said, no, I'm not going to create them like that? Somebody eventually was probably going to create these things, but because he was at least open to the idea, or at least he did it out of spite, a new amazing product was born. So what could that look like for you? How could you be open to new ideas when somebody has some constructive criticism or maybe even feedback that you don't find to be constructive or helpful at all? What can you do with it? Even an irritating customer could lead you to a happy accident. So there you have it, folks. Potato chips, the origin story. Is it true? Is it not true? You be the judge. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends. Are you like me? Do you remember playing with Velcro as a child? Just that satisfying sound you would make as the hooks and loops coming together and coming apart? Well, you have a hunting trip in the Swiss Alps to thank for this ingenious invention. Today's episode, Velcro. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. All right, so another happy accident story to dive into here. This week we're looking at the accidental story of Velcro and how this was invented. Just love stories like this. In this case, it's just somebody paying attention and to natural things in nature around them. So this story comes to us from a hunting trip by a Swiss engineer by the name of George de Mastrel. So he was out walking in the Swiss Alps when he notices all these burrs from the burdock plant sticking to his dog's fur. So, being a naturally curious person, George is intrigued by the way the small hooks on these burrs caught on the fibers of the fur of his dog. So, he decided, could I recreate this concept? Could I take this idea that's coming from nature and can I create a fastener that works like this? And that's exactly what happened. Velcro was born just from him noticing, being curious, and then taking it upon himself to recreate this idea. So what De Mastrel, sorry, he wove loops of cotton into a piece of cloth and then he cut the loops to create hooks. See if you can get a mental picture of that in your mind for a second. He wove loops of cotton into a piece of cloth and then he cut the loops to create hooks. He then attached the hooks to another piece of cloth with the loops, and voila! The two pieces of cloth securely hooked, interlocked together, forming a fastener that could easily be opened and closed. Strong enough to hold some stuff together, but easy enough to pull apart. Who would have thought that just a simple walk in the Alps could lead to such a revolutionary invention? I just love the idea of this. It's so simple. It's just really taking notice of the things around you and then being curious. Like, what's nature already doing that we can borrow from? Can I recreate something that's already happening in nature? God has created this amazing thing that's already serving a purpose. Can I recreate that to serve another purpose, maybe a bigger purpose or larger industrial things? Velcro is a wildly successful, wildly used product, all from this happy accident, just somebody taking notice. In fact, today, Velcro is used in a variety of applications, from clothing and footwear to space exploration. And whatever happened to George Del Mastro? Well, he's remembered as the creative genius who changed the course of modern history with his love for nature and curiosity. So, the next time you hear that satisfying sound of Velcro coming apart, remember the hunting trip in the Swiss Alps that made it all possible. What are some fun facts that we can dive into about Velcro? Well, the name itself is one. The name Velcro is actually a combination of the words velvet and crochet. Makes sense. Velcro. Velcro is still widely used by NASA today and can be found on spacesuits in the International Space Station and on various equipment and tools used by astronauts. The hooks and loops on Velcro can support up to 90 pounds, making it a strong and durable fastener. The sound of Velcro being opened and closed is so distinctive that it's been used in many movies and TV shows as a sound effect. Everybody instantly recognizes that sound. Okay, what are some lessons we can take away from this incredible story? I've got 5 of them here. 5 quick lessons we can pull from this amazing story of Velcro. Lesson number 1, observe and learn from nature. George Del Mastrel was inspired by the way burrs from the burdock plant stuck to his dog's fur. What other things can you observe in nature and replicate to serve a purpose in your own life? Lesson number 2, stay curious. Del Mastro's curiosity about the way burrs stuck to his dog's fur sparked his imagination and led him to develop Velcro. Another lesson, persevere through failures. Velcro was not an instant success. Del Mastro initially struggled to manufacture Velcro on a large scale and had to convince others of its potential. However, he did persevere and eventually succeeded. Lesson number 4, look beyond conventional solutions. Velcro offered a new and unconventional solution to the problem of fastening things. Del Mastro looked beyond conventional solutions and created something fully innovative. In the beginning, if it's very new, if it's very different, people are going to say you're crazy. I'm sure when he first came up with the idea of Velcro, they probably looked at him like he had two heads. And now look at it. It's used around the world. It's used by NASA in all kinds of different applications. And lesson number 5, embrace change. Del Mastro was open to new ideas and was willing to change his approach when necessary. This allowed him to keep refining his invention until it became the success we know of it today. So there you have it, the accidental story of Velcro. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends. Around 1998, one woman's quest for the perfect pair of white pants led to the creation of a revolutionary product. Today, in the Happy Accidents podcast, we're shining the spotlight on Sarah Blakely, the woman who went from selling fax machines door to door, yes, you heard that right, to revolutionizing the world of shapewear and creating a multi-million-dollar empire with her company, Spanx. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. Okay, before we dig into the story of Sarah Blakely and Spanx and really look at what happened there, what was the happy accident, and how did she capitalize on it, I want to take a step back for a second and dive into the concept, two contrasting theories or worldviews of convergence versus contingency. This is going to play a large role in a lot of the discussion, a lot of the stories, and hopefully a lot of the interviews that you end up hearing here on the podcast. This concept. So, convergence convergence versus contingency. Convergence. This is the everything happens for a reason school of thought. So, in this line of thinking, the belief is that we're all moving towards something, and it's going to happen no matter what. It's kind of a predestined, this is what your life is going to be like. This is what we as humans are working towards. This is the goal that we're all, or the endpoint that we're all striving towards. And those little decisions that we make or the actions that we take, they have little to no impact on the end result. We are moving in this direction. Contrast that, so that was convergence. Contrast that with the line of thinking or the school of thought of contingency. So in contingency, this is the stuff happens theory. This is the belief that everything we do matters and we're all interconnected. So we might be moving in a certain direction, but then some sort of random event happens, somebody makes a different decision, and we start having these different branches going off, and our trajectory, our end result, our future becomes very different than the trajectory we were on. So, for example, here is a small decision like hitting the snooze button one morning could end up having a profound impact on how the rest of your life might play out. That's the contingency theory. Whereas the convergence theory would say it doesn't matter if you hit the snooze button today, your train might be a little late, but you're still going to be on the same tracks. So, with that in mind, I want to just read you this quote from a great book that I've been reading called Fluke by Brian Kloss. And this is really going to frame this discussion before we dive back into the Spanx story. So, listen to this quote from the book. This is from page 13 of the book Fluke by Brian Kloss. Here's what he says. Imagine our lives are like a film and you could rewind back to yesterday. Then, when you reach the start of your day, you change one small detail, such as whether you stopped to have coffee before you rushed out the door. If your day stayed mostly the same, whether or not you paused to have your coffee, then that would be a convergent event. So Kloss kind of argues that there's both. There's convergent events and there's contingent events in our lives. So he's saying that would be a convergent event. The details didn't matter much. What happened was bound to happen regardless. I was a little bit late. I stopped for a coffee. I hit the snooze button. My day still pretty much unfolded the way it was going to. And as I said before, the train of your life left the station a few minutes later, but followed the same track. However, he says, if you stopped to have coffee and everything about your future life unfolded differently, then that would be a contingent event because so much hinged on that one small detail. And he's saying we experience convergence and contingent events continuously all throughout our day. We don't know what's going to be a convergent or contingent decision that we make. We don't know what's going to be a convergent versus contingent action that we take, but we experience all of these. And sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes it takes our life in a completely different direction. I want to give an example. So let's use his example of coffee and hitting the snooze button. So let's say you're a person who, in your morning routine, you like to get up every day and make yourself a coffee at home. That's the first thing you do. And then you kind of ease into your day. And you give yourself 45 minutes to an hour to kind of have this morning routine. And the first thing you do is coffee. Well, let's say one day, for whatever reason, you're up too late the night before, whatever, you just couldn't sleep well. You decide that morning, I can't get out of bed yet. I'm going to hit snooze. I got like 45 minutes to an hour for my morning routine. I can hit snooze. And then you hit snooze again. And then you hit snooze again. Now you're getting to the point where, like, oh boy, I've only given myself like 15, 20 minutes here to get up, get ready, get out the door, and get on my way to work. I can't stop and make myself a coffee. I'll just go through the drive through or I'll stop in at this coffee shop along the way and I'll get them to make me coffee and I'll drink it when I get to the office. And you get to this coffee place, you strike up a conversation with one of the people working there. You think, wow, I really have something in common with this person. We had a bit of a spark there. I kind of enjoyed that. Maybe tomorrow I'll do this again. And for the next few days, you keep going back to that same coffee spot. And next thing you know, it's not just conversations you're striking up with this person. You start a relationship. You start to date. Maybe fast forward a few years down the road and you're married. You've got a kid on the way. Would that have happened if you didn't hit snooze that one day and decide to venture into that coffee shop? That would be a contingent event. Hitting snooze changed the complete trajectory of your life. You probably never would have met that person. You certainly wouldn't have married them. And even if you did end up meeting that person 6 months later, everything would have been different. Your courtship, your dating, you probably wouldn't be married on the same date, which means you wouldn't be the same child that's coming out at the end of the day. That was a completely contingent event. The course of your life is drastically altered, according to this contingent theory, because when you trace it back, you decided to hit the snooze button that day. So let's bring this back. What the heck does this have to do with Sarah Blakely and Spanx? Well, let's dive into her story and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to rewind a bit here and let's look at Sarah Blakely's history. What's she doing to set the stage for this eventual happy accidents to come her way? Well, back in the day, Sarah, as I mentioned, was just an average door-to-door salesperson. She was hustling fax machines to make ends meet. Little did she know that her skills in sales and persistence would one day lead her to start a company that would change the game of women's undergarments forever. So it all started one day when Sarah was getting ready for a party. This was a company party, and she realized that she had a major wardrobe malfunction. The problem was there was no undergarments that was going to work for her favorite pair of white pants and still allow her to wear the sandals as her footwear that evening. She just couldn't make it work. I wanted to wear these pair of white pants. I wanted to wear these sandals. I wanted the right undergarments that was going to work. I cannot relate to this. I'm a man. I just throw on whatever and do a quick look in the mirror and hey, looks good. As long as my wife gives me the thumbs up, I'm out the door. Women, I know you guys have to put a lot more thought and care into this, and that's exactly what was going on for Sarah Blakely this night. So, in a stroke of genius or maybe desperation, she cut the feet off of a pair of pantyhose, and voila, Spanx were born. Blakely decided to take this idea for the new product and run with it. It was perfect. It made the fit right. It made her allowed her to wear the pants she wanted with the footwear she wanted. It was a brilliant, easy, simple idea born out of this, frustration or desperation, this random happy accident that just kind of happened that day. But the journey for her was just beginning. From there, Sarah faced numerous challenges and rejections in her attempts to get her product produced and sold in stores. But remember, she was a door-to-door fax salesman. She's a salesperson. She knew about sales, she knew about persistence, she knew how to convince people. So she never gave up, and eventually a buyer from Neiman Marcus took a chance on her, and the rest is history. Spanx has become this wildly successful multi-million dollar empire, offering a wide range of body shaping undergarments for both women and men, and all because of one woman's innovative solution to a common problem. Blakely herself notes that countless women have reached out to her to say that they were cutting the feet off their pantyhose for years, but are kicking themselves because they never thought to pursue this as a business idea. But it was Blakely who had both the idea and the persistence to make it happen. So now let's go back to this concept of contingency versus convergence. I like to play this game of what if, especially with these happy accident stories. What if Blakely never had this background um, in door to door sales? Would she be savvy enough to get this company off the ground? Would she have the persistence that she needed to be able to convince somebody to start producing this for her? Or did that lead to the other? But let's take it a step further. What if she wasn't going to this party? Or what if the party was during a different time of year when she didn't need to wear these white pants with her open toed sandals? Would she have then had to make that decision to try and find the right undergarment? What if, what if, what if? Or was she on this path to be this great entrepreneur and it was going to happen regardless? It's so fun to play what if. But in this case, all the stars aligned. She had the background, she had the sales, she had the persistence, she had this entrepreneurial mind, she had this frustrating problem, she had the ingenuity to solve the problem. She then had the capacity to recognize this opportunity and then had the boldness to capitalize on it. All of those things had to come together in what I like to call a happy accident to create this massive success that we now see as Spanx. Pretty cool to think about it like that, right? What if? What if one of those things didn't happen? Would she have ended up where she is today, or was she always on that path? So the next time you encounter a serendipitous situation like this, just remember the story of Spanx and how one happy accident can lead to a world of success. Okay, we're not done yet. Let's dig into some fun facts about Sarah Blakely and Spanx, and then I'll leave you finally with some lessons that we can all learn from this. So, starting off with the fun facts. Sarah Blakely created Spanx in her apartment with only $5,000 in savings. When she got the idea, she actually moved, I'm not sure why, but she moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and decided, I need to start this company. And with only $5,000 in her bank, she had the perseverance and the ingenuity to really get this thing off the ground. Spanx itself, spelled Spanx, actually comes from the word Spanx, Spanks, which is just a slang for tight pants. So if you're wondering where the name Spanx came from, there you go, comes from Spanx. Another fun fact, in 2012, Sarah Blakely became the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. Crazy. Another fun fact, Spanx has been featured in numerous TV shows and movies, including Sex and the City, The Devil Wears Prada, and worn by countless celebrities, including Oprah Winfrey, Jessica Parker, and Gwyneth Paltrow. And finally, our last fun fact, in 2020, Sarah Blakely pledged to give away half of her wealth to charity through the Giving Pledge. Wow, that's some philanthropy right there. Okay, let's end this off with some lessons learned. This is an incredible story, but there's lots we can all take away from this as well. So, Sarah Blakely and Spanx, what's the first takeaway lesson here? First one is solve a problem you personally face. I hear so many people talking about, if there was just a problem out there I could solve, I have the smarts, I have the background, I have my MBA, I have sales, whatever. I'm sure I could get a business off the ground and make something of it. I just need the idea. Well, look at Sarah Blakely. She just had this minor annoyance, this minor problem, and she solved it. So if you're having this problem, chances are other people are having this problem. Can you come up with a solution that's valuable enough for them to see the value in solving that problem with your solution? Sarah Blakely created Spanx after being frustrated with the lack of options for smooth, comfortable undergarments. By identifying the problem she faced, she was able to create a solution that filled a gap in the market. Lesson number 2, be persistent. Sarah Blakely faced numerous rejections when trying to get Spanx into stores, but she didn't give up. Her persistence paid off when she eventually found success. Lesson number 3, think outside the box. Sarah Blakely took a unique approach to shaping undergarments by using a footless design. She cut the bottoms of pantyhose. Her innovative approach helps set Spanx apart from other shapewear brands. And the final takeaway lesson for you here, believe in yourself. Sarah Blakely took a risk by quitting her job and starting Spanx with limited savings, but she believed in herself and her idea. Her self-belief combined with her hard work helped her turn Spanx into a successful company. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends. Welcome back to the Happy Accidents podcast. Hey, are you a music lover? Then you're in luck. Pardon the pun. Today we're getting into the rhythm of things, with part 1 of a special 2-part Happy Accidents series all about the music biz. Yes, a 2-parter. But hold on to your headphones, folks, because we're not talking your run-of-the-mill success stories here. No, we're diving deep into the juiciest tales of chance encounters and accidental hits. In this first episode today, we're kicking things off with the stories behind 2 different iconic duos who didn't plan on teaming up, but fate had other ideas. Think unexpected meetings, instant chemistry, and collaborations that changed the game. And that's just the warm-up. In our next episode, part 2, we're spilling the beans on 2 legendary songs that were born from the most random of moments. From shower thoughts to chance encounters, you won't believe the twists and turns behind these timeless tunes. So grab a seat, crank up the volume, and get ready to discover the untold stories behind your favorite jams. It's time to groove to the beat of happy accidents. Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure. So our first story of this episode today is about a very famous songwriting duo that you've probably all heard of. So this story all starts when a pair of strangers, both separately, answered an ad in the back of a music industry magazine that was looking for songwriters. So the year was 1967. The ad was placed by Liberty Records. They were a record label, and they were looking for some new talent. One of those strangers went by the name of Reginald Kenneth Dwight. Probably doesn't ring a bell to you, and you'll see why in a second. The other of those strangers, he went by the name of Bernard John Taupin. Might ring a bell. Reginald and Bernard had never met each other before, but the record company saw something special in both of them and their combination. So they were introduced to each other through Liberty Records, and they began working together. Now, initially, there was a problem, and that problem eventually ended up being a huge success. Reginald couldn't write lyrics. Bernard, on the other hand, was a gifted wordsmith, but he couldn't write music. You see where this is going. So despite this, the two of them hit it off and began working on songs together. Now, one day, Reginald was flipping through Bernard's notebook, and he came across the lyrics for something that was called Your Song. That might sound familiar. So Reginald sits down at the piano and began playing a melody that perfectly matched the lyrics. And the rest, as they say, is history. Reginald soon changed his name to, you may have guessed it already, Elton John. Bernard just shortened his to Bernie. Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Well, the song, Your Song, became a huge hit, and Elton and Bernie continued to collaborate on numerous other hits, including ones like Tiny Dancer, Rocket Man, Bending the Jets, the list goes on. Their partnership has actually lasted for over 50 years, making them one of the most successful songwriting duos in history. And just imagine, it was a happy accident that Elton and Bernie both answered that same ad and were thrown together by Liberty Records. They might never have met each other otherwise, and we might never have been blessed with the incredible music that they've been creating together. This is where it's fun to play What If. Let's rewind the clock for a second and just imagine how this could have played out completely differently. What if one or both of them didn't answer that ad in the magazine? Would either or both of them eventually gone on to be successful songwriters or musicians, in the case of Elton John? What if Liberty Records hadn't decided to pair them together? Would they have gone on to find success with other gifted songwriters or musicians who complemented them so perfectly? What if? I guess we'll never know, but lucky for us, we don't have to speculate. It was this chance encounter, this happy accident that brought these two together, and they went on to create music history. Our second story begins in October of 1961, where in the bustling train station of Dartford, England, two young men who would go on to make music history together would unexpectedly cross paths. So what happened and who were these guys? Well, here's how it unfolded. Each of these two young men just happened to be carrying some vinyl records with them by their favorite blues artists. This was the trigger that helped them strike up a conversation. They obviously shared a love for music, but it would also become the foundation of their eventual friendship and creative partnership. So as they struck up this conversation, one of them noticed that the other also had a guitar in his hand. So now it was apparent he didn't just enjoy listening to music, but he also enjoyed playing and creating it as well. Well, the other one just so happened to be a singer, and as we would later find out, quite a charismatic frontman. So as they began to chat further and dove deeper into their shared passion of the blues, little did they know that this chance encounter would become the catalyst for an extraordinary journey in music. So who were these two young men? Well, they were none other than Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Imagine, they just bumped into each other one day unexpectedly at the train station. Recognizing that they shared this musical bond, Mick wasted no time in inviting Keith to join the band that he was assembling. No, not the Rolling Stones. At the time, the band was called Little Boy Blue and the Blue Boys. Imagine that. Well, Keith eagerly embraced the opportunity and their collaboration began to take shape. Over the years, Mick and Keith's partnership evolved and flourished. They complemented each other's talents really well, with Mick's electrifying stage presence and distinctive vocals blending perfectly with Keith's virtuoso guitar skills and songwriting prowess. Eventually, the Rolling Stones were born, forever altering the landscape of rock music. So just like Elton John and Bernie Taupin's chance encounter that sparked their incredible career as a songwriting duo, Mick and Keith's accidental meeting at the Dartford train station set in motion a rock and roll legacy that continues to captivate generations of music lovers worldwide. So here's where we get to play What If again. I always love this part. What if one of them was late for their train? Would they have ever met? What if they weren't carrying around records and a guitar? Would they have struck up a conversation? Would they have even had a reason to? Would they have even noticed each other? What if Mick didn't take the opportunity to ask Keith to join his band? Or what if the timing or circumstances wasn't right for Keith to say yes? What if? Would either of them have gone on to be the famous rock stars and reach the fame and fortune they eventually did? I guess we'll never know. Okay, let's dive into some fun facts about both of these stories. Let's start off with Elton John and Bernie Taupin. So, Tiny Dancer, fun fact here, was written about Taupin's first wife and is now actually one of Elton John's most iconic songs. Another fun fact, Elton John has sold over 300 million records worldwide. That's just an incredible number, 300 million. That makes him one of the best-selling music artists of all times. Would that have happened if he hadn't been serendipitously paired with Bernie Taupin? Don't know. Elton John and Bernie Taupin have collaborated on over 30 studio albums, making them one of the most successful songwriting partnerships in music history. So what about Mick and Keith? Well, some fun facts here. Their first song that they wrote together was called As Tears Go By, which became a hit for someone by the name of Marianne Faithfull. Another fun fact, the Rolling Stones' debut album, which was released in 1964, was titled The Rolling Stones in the UK, but in the US, it was called England's Newest Hitmakers. Bit of a strange twist there. Another fun fact, Mick and Keith were both born in the same year, 1943, but just a few months apart. And finally, the Rolling Stones have released 25 studio albums, 13 live albums, 28 compilation albums, 3 extended plays, 121 singles, 33 box sets, 51 video albums, 2 video box sets, and 77 music videos. Holy smokes. Throughout their career, they've sold over 240 million records worldwide. Wow. So, what are some of the lessons we can learn from each of these stories? I've got 4 here, 2 that I'll share from each. So let's start with Mick and Keith. Well, first lesson here, nurture some shared passions. Mick and Keith shared the love of blues music, and that became the foundation of their creative collaboration. In fact, actually, that's what struck up their conversation in the first place. Would they have even met each other and talked to each other if they hadn't noticed the blues albums underneath each other's arms? This emphasizes the importance of finding like-minded individuals who ignite your passion. And lesson number 2 from the Rolling Stones story, seize opportunities. Mick Jagger's quick thinking and invitation for Keith to join his band propelled their musical journey. Recognize and seize opportunities that come your way, even if they seem spontaneous and unconventional. I am thoroughly convinced that almost all success can be traced back to a happy accident in some way, shape, or form, some sort of unexpected thing that lands in your lap and you go for it. Seize those opportunities. So what are some lessons we can learn from the Elton John and Bernie Taupin story? Well, lesson number 1, collaboration is key. Elton John and Bernie Taupin's partnership shows that collaboration can lead to great things. They were able to create some of the greatest songs of all time by combining their talents and working together. They each brought a different piece of the puzzle together. So whereas Mick and Keith had some shared passions, Elton John and Bernie Taupin also had some shared passions, but they had to come at it from different angles. And together, that collaboration was explosive, incredible. Just some of the most amazing songs we've ever heard. And the final lesson here, taking risks pays off. When they first met, Elton John was just starting out and Bernie Taupin was a struggling songwriter. However, the record company and each other took a chance and it paid off. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do, but make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends.